Mira lived a quiet life in the green valleys of Earth. Her home was a small cottage, surrounded by a garden full of flowers, vegetables, and tall fruit trees. She worked in a greenhouse nearby, taking care of rare plants. She didn't own a computer, and she didn't watch the news. Mira liked silence, sunlight, and the smell of soil. People in the village called her kind but odd. She always carried a small notebook and a pencil in her pocket. Sometimes she stopped in the middle of the road, stared at the clouds, and began drawing strange patterns in her notebook. No one knew what she was writing. She just smiled and said, "Just shapes, just numbers." One morning, something unusual happened. While watering her plants, Mira noticed a single leaf glowing bright blue. It floated slowly from the top of a lemon tree and landed softly in her hand. The light didn't hurt her eyes. In fact, it felt warm. As she looked closer, glowing words appeared on the leaf. "You have been chosen. The equation of all roots awaits you. Travel begins at sunset." Mira blinked. She looked around, thinking someone was playing a joke. But she was alone, and the leaf kept glowing. She folded the leaf gently and placed it in her notebook. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, the sky turned golden red. Mira sat in her garden, notebook in hand. She wasn't afraid. Somehow she knew this moment had been coming for a long time. Then, without a sound, a strange light appeared above her garden. It formed a perfect circle. Inside it stood a tall, silver doorway. It opened slowly, and a calm voice spoke, "Mira of Earth, please step forward." She stood up, dusted off her clothes, and walked through the doorway. On the other side, Mira found herself on a glowing platform in deep space. Stars surrounded her. Giant ships floated nearby, shaped like birds, crystals, and even spinning cubes. Strange beings moved around, tall, thin, with shimmering skin or covered in scales. They all wore elegant robes or shining armor. A short alien with large green eyes approached her. He introduced himself in clear, soft words. "I am Rem, guide of the core tower. You are one of the invited minds." Mira tilted her head. "Invited for what?" Rem's eyes widened. "You do not know?" He paused, then smiled. "That makes this even more interesting." He led her inside a long hallway filled with light. Along the walls were floating screens, each showing strange symbols and spinning stars dot as they walked. Rem explained, "In this galaxy, there is one problem no mind has solved. We call it the equation of all roots. It was written by the first builders, long before any of us. It is the key to safe, instant travel through wormholes. Many have tried to solve it, Zilari thinkers, Frox machines, even star-born minds. All failed." He looked at her carefully. "But you were chosen by the core tower itself. That has never happened to a human." Mira stayed quiet. Her eyes watched the glowing lines on the walls. Some of them looked familiar. Curves, spirals, numbers dancing like vines. Her fingers moved in the air, tracing invisible paths. They reached a wide hall. In the center stood a tall glass pillar, glowing from within. Around it, 20 beings stood in silence. They were the brightest minds from across the galaxy. The Zilari, with their crystal eyes. The Slarn, with long necks and glowing veins. And the Frox, machines that lived inside golden armor. As Mira entered, whispers broke out. "Is that a human? Surely a mistake. She has no tools. She looks normal." A voice rose from the center of the hall. A Frox leader, with rings of light spinning around its head, stepped forward. "All thinkers present. You each have 3 hours to attempt the equation. Bring your tools, bring your minds. May the brightest light shine." The floor changed shape, forming private platforms for each guest. Screens appeared, each showing the strange, swirling symbols of the ancient equation. Mira stepped onto her own small platform. It had no screen, no tools, only a flat table and a chair. She pulled out her notebook and pencil. Then she smiled and sat down. As the others began working, typing, calculating, linking their minds to machines, Mira simply watched. She stared at the symbols floating in front of her, then closed her eyes. She wasn't thinking in numbers. She was feeling the flow. The equation didn't look broken. It looked like a path hidden in a garden, one that curved behind bushes and around trees, never straight, but always leading somewhere. She whispered softly, like the roots of a tree. Not a line, but a dance. No one heard her. They were too busy running millions of calculations, but the core tower was watching, and it had started to glow. Just a little. The core tower stood at the center of the galaxy, a giant pillar of light and crystal, floating above a bright blue star. It was built long ago by the first builders, who had disappeared before any known race had traveled the stars. The tower held knowledge, codes, and puzzles. The greatest among them was the equation of all roots. For centuries, it had tested the finest minds. No one had passed. Some said the equation was broken. Others believed it was not meant to be solved. But today, something had changed. The core tower had sent invitations on its own. It had chosen minds without asking the council. One of them was a woman from Earth. Mira. Mira stepped into the central hall of the core tower. The room was large and round. The floor was made of smooth, glowing stone. The walls showed moving patterns, stars spinning, numbers falling like rain, shapes forming and fading. A floating ring of golden light hovered above everyone. It whispered rules in hundreds of languages. Mira heard it in her own tongue. Do not lie, do not harm. You may try once. She looked around. The others had already started working. The Zalari thinkers sat in silence, their eyes glowing as they connected their minds to crystal devices. The Slarn stood tall, waving their six arms, drawing symbols in the air. The Frox machines worked like factories, wires moving fast, thoughts racing like fire through their metal shells. And then there was Mira, sitting alone, holding a wooden pencil. The Frox leader, named Greidelfor, noticed her. Why is the human still here? Greidelfor asked loudly. This problem is not for creatures of dirt and water. Remn, her guide, stepped forward. She was chosen by the tower. Greidelfor's lights flashed in anger. Mistakes happen. But no one stopped Mira. The tower had allowed her to sit. That was enough. Mira didn't feel angry. She didn't feel scared. She felt curious. She opened her notebook. Inside were old sketches, spirals, trees, clouds, river maps, and shapes made of tiny numbers. She smiled at one page, a swirl of numbers that looked like a shell. She had drawn it when she was 10. Now she looked at the equation. Floating in front of her. It moved slowly, not like a machine, but like a living thing. Symbols changed shape, lines bent. Some numbers didn't follow rules. Others danced like birds in a pattern. It wasn't cold or dry. It was alive. Myra whispered to herself. It's not just numbers, it's motion. It's choice. She closed her eyes. She didn't use formulas. She didn't count. She just followed the shape, like tracing the path of a leaf in the wind. Her hand began to move. Pencil touched paper. The other thinkers didn't notice her. They were too busy. One Slarn shouted in frustration. The path splits again. This cannot be real. A Zalari clicked its crystal fingers. It repeats after 74 loops, but the gate doesn't open. I see no logic. Even Greidelfor seemed stuck. Even our deepest network finds no key. Suddenly, Rem gasped. The platform under Mira had started to glow. She had placed her notebook gently on the table. Her answer was complete. She had written it in just 47 seconds. The moment the page touched the table, the core tower shook. Light exploded from the ceiling, racing through the walls like lightning. The floating golden ring above everyone spun faster and faster. Strange symbols appeared in the air, ancient ones, unreadable by most. Then a deep, warm voice echoed through the hall that it wasn't from any speaker. It came from the walls, the floor, the air. Answer accepted. Pattern aligned, core awakened. Gasps filled the room. Thinkers stood frozen. What just happened? Azalari asked. The answer. It passed. Aslarn whispered. Gridle 4 moved forward, scanning the table. Who helped her? What device did she use? Rem stood still, his green eyes wide. No one helped. She used paper. And a pencil. The floating ring stopped spinning. It glowed soft blue. New shapes appeared on every screen. Star maps. Wormhole routes. Portals that had been blocked for centuries. The core tower had unlocked them. The impossible had become possible. Mira sat quietly. She didn't smile or shout. She just looked at the pattern on the paper and nodded. It was a spiral, she said softly. Like the sunflower, no one spoke. Even the frocks were silent. Then the core spoke again. This mind sees not in logic alone, but in life. The missing variable has returned. Human intuition, accepted. Those words shocked everyone. Human intuition? That was the key? Gridle 4 turned to her. How did you solve it? Who are you really? Mira stood up slowly. I'm just someone who likes patterns. I plant seeds. I watch them grow. I listen to the wind. One Zalari bowed deeply. Then Earth has a gift greater than we understood. Suddenly, the screens lit up again. A new message appeared across all of them. The seat is open. Let her take it. The council chamber, where only the most powerful minds of the galaxy gathered, was calling for Mira. She didn't know what to say. She had come with a pencil. She had sat among machines. And now they wanted her to lead? Mira looked down. At her hands, soil under her nails, a notebook, full of swirls, and a heart that simply loved understanding things. She looked up, and quietly said, I'm not here to lead. I'm here to learn. The grand chamber of the core tower was no longer silent. Whispers, gasps, and low hums filled the air. Lights danced across the walls, showing the changing wormhole maps, hundreds of routes, long believed unstable or broken, now shining clearly. Like threads across space. And at the center of it all stood Mira, the quiet woman from Earth. No one could understand how it happened. The equation of all routes, the most difficult math problem in the known galaxy, had been solved, not by machines, not by alien masters of logic, but by a human woman using a pencil and paper in just 47 seconds. Gridle 4, the frocks. Leader could not accept it. There must be a trick, he said sharply, spinning in frustration. Let me see the notebook again. Ren, her guide, held it tightly. You've scanned it 3 times. There is no hidden device, no signal, no hack. Her answer is simple and correct. Gridle 4's lights turned red. She has no advanced training, no known schooling. She didn't even look at the full equation for more than a minute. A Slarn thinker joined in. Perhaps the equation was never meant to be solved through logic alone. Azalari nodded slowly. The path she found was not in numbers, but in nature. Mira stood quietly while the others argued. Her notebook was back in her hand now. She opened it again, looked at her sketch, a spiral of numbers with a soft curl near the end. It looked almost like the pattern in a snail's shell, or a sunflower's face. She traced it gently with her finger. I didn't solve it with formulas, she said softly. I just followed the flow. Rem turned to her. Can you explain what you mean? Mira thought for a moment. It's like when water runs down a hill. It doesn't go straight. It curves, turns, splits, joins, but in the end, it reaches the river. This equation is the same. If you try to force it, it fights back. But if you listen to it, it shows you where it wants to go. The chamber grew silent again. A voice spoke from the walls. It was the core AI, awakened after many centuries. Most minds seek control. This one sought harmony. The golden ring above began to spin slowly, releasing glowing drops of light that floated toward Mira. They didn't burn. They felt cool and peaceful. When the light touched her skin, it left a soft shimmer, like moonlight on water. This thinker has done what no other could. A new path is now open. Suddenly, a loud tone echoed through the hall. The core tower's floor shifted, and a round platform rose from beneath. On it stood a tall silver chair, smooth, shining, and shaped like a blooming flower. Everyone recognized it. The seat of the core, it had been empty for over 900 years, waiting for a mind worthy enough to sit in it, to guide the future of galactic travel, to connect worlds across impossible space. The AI spoke again. Let her take the seat. Mira looked at it, then at the others. I don't think I belong there, she said quietly. I'm not a leader. I grow plants, I fix broken roots, I'm just me. Bridal 4 replied, you solved the unsolvable. The tower called you. Whether you accept it or not, you are no longer just a gardener. Rem stepped closer. It is not about ruling. It is about sharing what you see. The galaxy has been blind in one eye for too long, the eye of feeling, of shape, of nature. You opened it again. The Zalari speakers chimed in. We studied stars but forgot rivers. We learned machines but forgot trees. Your thinking is not weakness. It is balance. Mira stayed silent. She looked at the spinning ring, the floating maps, the glowing seat, and then slowly she walked past it. I'm not ready, she said gently, but I can help. From the garden, from the side. The ring paused its spin, as if surprised. Then the core Aya responded. Help may come from any place. Seat will remain open. Path will remain clear. The silver chair slowly lowered back into the floor. Mira looked at the new star maps around her. The once fractured wormhole paths were now stable. Planets that had been unreachable could now be visited. Lost colonies might now be saved. Trade, rescue, exploration, all could begin again. And all because of her small spiral, drawn by hand in 47 seconds. Back in the viewing gallery, a young alien thinker asked a quiet question. Why did it take us centuries, and she only needed 1 minute? His teacher answered, because we were trying to solve it. She was trying to understand it. Later, Ren walked with Myra through the peaceful garden floor of the core tower, a hidden space with floating trees, still ponds, and soft lights. Do you want to return to Earth now? He asked. Yes, she replied. There's a tree I forgot to water, he smiled. You may not know it, Mira, but the galaxy just turned in a new direction because of you. She picked up a pebble and rolled it in her fingers. Even rivers turn, Ren. One small stone is enough. As they walked toward the portal, stars shone through the tower's crystal walls. Mira paused and looked up at them. So many roots, she whispered, and all they needed was someone who remembered how things grow. Even after Mira returned to Earth, the galaxy couldn't stop talking about her. The news spread fast, across planets, through space stations, and into the minds of billions. People watched the recordings again and again. The part where she sat down calmly, looked at the impossible equation, and began writing with an old wooden pencil. The clock showed it clearly, 47 seconds. That was all it took. On Veltran Prime, the scholars of the Zalari Council held a special session. They paused all research just to study Myra's answer. A senior Zalari with glowing blue eyes read her steps slowly. This is not just math, she said. This is art, the way she curved the pattern. Matched the ancient flowcharts we thought were long lost. The younger Zalari stared at the page in silence. One whispered, she didn't just solve the equation, she understood it. On the Frog's homeworld, things were not as peaceful. Gridle 4 sat in the high logic room, surrounded by other Frog's minds. They had connected their thoughts into one large machine brain. It had one task: find the flaw in Mira's solution. Hours passed. Lights blinked. Energy pulsed. Numbers moved. Then a voice from the system said, "There is no flaw. Her answer is perfect. Except, Greidel 4 didn't move." His lights dimmed. He had led the Frox Logic Council for over 120 years. He had broken hundreds of codes, designed over 50 star routes, and even solved Cold War equations between planets. But he had never seen anything like this. "She used no machine," he whispered. "She drew a spiral, and the galaxy changed." Back on Earth, Mira returned to her normal life. She walked through her garden, checked her plants, and fixed her fence. She didn't speak much to the neighbors, but they noticed something different. Her eyes looked deeper, like she had seen something far beyond the sky. Children came to visit her now. They sat in her yard while she showed them leaves, seeds, and shells. She talked about patterns, in flowers, in snow, even in the way ants move. One girl asked, "Did you really solve the hardest question in space?" Myra smiled. "I just followed the shape." One day, a group of visitors arrived. Not reporters, not scientists, but young thinkers from different planets. There was a Zalari boy with shining skin, a Slarn girl with 6 fingers, and a quiet Frox child who rolled instead of walked. They sat on the grass near Mira's garden. "We wanted to learn how you think," the Zalari said. Mira handed them each a smooth stone. "Then don't start with machines. Start with what you feel. What do you see in this stone?" They stared at it. Some saw shapes, some saw colors. One drew a tiny curve in the dirt with her finger. Mira nodded. "Good, now follow that." Meanwhile, in the core tower, the golden ring began to move again. Since Myra's answer, the new routes had opened. Ships were flying to distant places that had been locked away for centuries. Trade had started again. Scientists were planning rescue missions to old colonies once thought lost, and something even stranger was happening. The core tower had started choosing new humans to visit, not scientists. Not soldiers, but artists, builders, cooks, dancers, and farmers. Rem, the guide who had once brought Mira to the tower, stood before the Council of Minds. "You asked why she was chosen," he said. "Now we understand. It was never about speed, or power, or logic. It was about balance," a Zalari elder replied. "And now, we must look at humans differently," Rem nodded. "Not just as loud and emotional, but as creative, as intuitive, as something we have forgotten." On Earth, Mira sat under her lemon tree, the same one where the glowing leaf had fallen. She held her notebook in her lap. The spiral was still there, the same one she had drawn in the core tower. But now beside it, she added a second shape, a curve that looped gently, like a dance. A bird landed nearby and watched her. She looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, starships were flying through new gates, following the pattern she had drawn, all from a quiet garden. And 47 seconds. In the distance, the wind carried voices of children learning. They weren't learning just numbers, they were learning to see, to follow, to listen, to imagine. And Mira just kept planting seeds. Even far beyond Earth, the impact of Myra's 47-second solution kept growing. Across planets, research stations, and learning centers, scholars continued to study her method. Her answer had unlocked more than just wormhole routes. It had opened a new way of thinking. No longer did the galaxy trust only machines and logic. Now it looked to feeling, rhythm, and natural patterns, the kind of thinking Mira used every day without even calling it math. In a large hall on the Zalari planet Nuvianth, a crowd of students sat in silence. They were watching the slow replay of Myra's solution. The equation floated in the air. Below it, her spiral sketch unfolded like flower petals. The teacher, a wise Zalari woman named Tulla, walked to the front. She never used a formula, Tila said, yet she saw the whole thing. "Why?" A small student raised her hand. Because she didn't try to control it, she followed it. Tala nodded. Yes, she didn't fight the problem, she listened to it. Then she paused and added, maybe we've been too proud for too long. Even on the Frock's world of Tronkava, a change had begun. The Frock's leaders, once strict and unbending, had been silent for days. Bridal 4, who once spoke boldly against humans, had now locked himself in a reflection chamber. Inside, he stared at Myra's spiral, trying to understand how something so simple had solved something so great. He remembered how Mira had said, "It's like water. It wants to flow." She had treated the problem like a living thing. No calculation. No command. Just quiet understanding. Back on Earth, Mira's life had changed, but not in the way people expected. She refused fame. She didn't take interviews. She didn't wear any special clothes or speak at large events. Instead, she continued working in her greenhouse. She watered her plants, trimmed dry branches, and taught local children about leaves and sunlight. But visitors came anyway, not for autographs, but to learn. Some were aliens, some were humans. Many were just curious minds, hoping to understand how Myra saw the world. One day, an alien child from the floating city of Kavuri visited her. Child, a soft-skinned being with silver eyes, sat by her side as she showed him a pinnacone. "Do you see this?" Mira asked gently. The child nodded. "It's not random," she said. "Every line, every seed, they follow a pattern." The child blinked. "Is it a math pattern?" "It's nature's math," Mira smiled. "No numbers needed. Just balance." He looked at her in wonder. "Do all humans see like this?" She laughed softly. "Not all, but many could, if they slowed down." Far above, in the core tower, new reports kept arriving. Ships were traveling farther. Trade was booming. Lost planets were reconnecting. And none of it would have been possible without Myra's equation path. The core AI, which had slept for centuries before Myra's visit, was now fully awake. It sent this message to the leaders of the galaxy. Let every school teach both reason and rhythm. Let both logic and feeling lead. One without the other is only half of truth. In response, the Galactic High Table held a meeting. The seats were filled with leaders from many races, thinkers, builders, warriors, and dreamers. Some had doubted Mira, others had praised her. But now, they all listened. Ria-Men, her guide, stood and spoke on her behalf. Mira does not seek power. She asks for no reward. She only wants to plant ideas like she plants trees. But maybe that's what the galaxy needs now, someone who does not chase the stars, but helps others reach them. A Zalari leader asked, "Should we offer her a permanent place among us?" Rem paused, then smiled. "We already did." She said no. Gasps rose from the chamber. Rem nodded. But she did ask for one thing. What was it? Someone asked. "A garden," Rem said simply. She asked for a space garden where young minds from every world could come, sit on the grass, and learn from nature together. The room went silent. And then they all agreed. Within a month, the galactic spiral garden was opened, floating just above the core tower. It had no walls, no machines, just soft grass, open skies, and paths shaped like spirals. Every week, visitors came, not to study math, but to see beauty, to ask questions, and to remember how to wonder. Mira visited once a season. She walked through the garden barefoot, her notebook in her pocket. She smiled at the children, nodded at the teachers, and sometimes sat beside a tree with her eyes closed, just listening to the wind. She never made speeches. She never gave orders. But her presence changed everything. One Frock's child once asked her, "Are you really the woman who solved the great equation?" Mira looked at him gently. "No," she said. "I'm the woman who listened to it." While the galaxy celebrated Mira's quiet wisdom, some minds remained curious, not about her answer, but about her past. Where did she come from? How did she learn to think like that? Was she born with this gift, or was she taught? The Core Tower's knowledge circle decided to find out. They sent a researcher, a soft-spoken Zalari named Varan, to Earth. Varan was not there to question Mira, but to observe gently, to follow the threads of her life like she had followed the spiral of the ancient equation. Varan arrived in Mira's village during spring. The trees were full of blossoms. Children ran barefoot, and the air smelled of lemons and soil. Mira met him with her usual calm smile. "You're from the tower," she said simply. Varan bowed. "Only to learn, not to disturb." She nodded. "Then come. The tomatoes need help." From that day, Varan stayed nearby, helping in the garden, watching how Mira worked, listening as she explained patterns in the petals and the roots. No tests, no labs, just patience. Over time, Varan gathered pieces of Mira's story. She had never gone to a large school. Her family had been quiet, gentle people, farmers and builders. Her mother had drawn pictures in the sand to teach her counting. Her grandmother, named Ina, had always told her to watch the sky before solving anything. "Answers are already written there," Ina had said. "You just need to see them." One evening, as the sun dipped low, Mira and Varan sat under the lemon tree. He finally asked, "Did your family understand your way of thinking?" Mira looked at the horizon. "They didn't call it anything special. They just said I had a calm mind. I liked drawing shapes more than speaking." Varan was quiet for a moment, then asked gently, "Have you always seen patterns where others don't?" She nodded. "Yes, in water, in wind, even in silence." He opened his notebook. "But how did that help you solve the core equation?" Mira turned to him with a soft smile. "Because the equation was a kind of silence too." Varan sent his report to the Core Tower weeks later. In it he wrote, "Mira was not taught in the ways of numbers. Her gift came from observation, connection, and deep listening. Her mind is like a pond, still but full of reflection. We have called her simple, but perhaps we are the ones who made things too complex." In response, the Core AI made a public message. "Let it be known, wisdom does not always come from data. Sometimes it grows in soil and silence." The message was carved into the entrance of the galactic spiral garden. Visitors from every planet came to read it. Some bowed. Some cried. Some simply sat under the trees in silence, hoping to understand what Mira had always known. Meanwhile, on Earth, something unexpected happened. A strange silver flower began growing in Mira's garden, one she had never planted. It shimmered in moonlight and gave off a soft hum when touched. Mira knelt beside it. Curious. It was a gift from the Core Tower, a living recorder, grown from the same crystal used in the AI's heart. It could record thoughts and replay them. In the wind, when Mira spoke near it, the flower responded. One evening she said, "I wonder how far they'll go with the new paths." The flower shimmered, and her words echoed softly back. "How far they'll go with the new paths," she smiled. So even the flowers are listening now. The villagers noticed. Their small town became a place of learning. Children from different planets began to study there. Not with books or machines, but with gardens, clouds, and shapes. Mira never called herself a teacher, but the children did. They called her Pattern-Mother. One morning, a young Frox child visited her alone. His name was Linter, and he was very quiet. He didn't play or ask many questions. He only watched. Finally, Mira asked, "Do you want to try drawing a pattern?" Linter shook his head. "I don't know how." Mira handed him a smooth rock and said, "Just start. Even a line is a beginning." Linter drew a small curve, then another. By the end of the day, he had drawn a full spiral. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Mira looked at it and said softly, "There, the seed is planted." In the stars above, ships continued to travel through the wormholes Mira had helped unlock. Explorers reached long-lost colonies, Healers brought aid to distant planets. Artists carried Mira's spiral across the stars, carving it into walls, painting it on ships, and building gardens in its shape. And always, always, her name was spoken with respect. Not as a queen or a hero, but as the woman who listened. Many years had passed since Mira solved the impossible problem in 47 seconds. The galaxy had changed because of her solution. Ships now traveled faster. Medicine reached faraway planets in time. And people no longer believed that only powerful minds or machines could bring progress. They believed in calm minds, simple thoughts, and quiet observation, the way Mira had always lived. But Mira was no longer young. She still worked in her garden. Her hands were slower, her hair fully white. Yet her eyes remained steady, always watching the patterns in nature. Clouds, leaves, shadows. Children still came to visit her. Even travelers from other worlds would come to see this simple woman, whose mind had changed the stars. Some expected a great lab or a palace. Instead, they found a small house, a wooden table, and a woman picking herbs with a soft smile. One day, Mira sat under the lemon tree with her old friend, the alien researcher Varan. They drank warm root tea. "You know," Varan said, "they still talk about you at the tower." Mira laughed gently. "What for?" "That was long ago. They study your method. They try to teach it in schools. They even gave it a name, spiral thinking." Mira shook her head. "It was never a method. Just ... how I saw things," Varan smiled. "That's what they're trying to understand." Mira looked up at the wind blowing through the branches. "The moment you try to catch the wind," she said, "you stop feeling it." That night Mira sat in front of the silver flower. It still whispered back her words when she spoke to it. She touched one of its petals and said, "The stars are moving faster now." The flower replied gently, "The stars moving faster." She closed her eyes and listened to the soft hum. Then she spoke again, "I think it's time." The next morning, the village was quiet. Mira had passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her face was calm, her hands folded. A small spiral stone lay near her pillow. The villagers did not cry loudly. They lit small lanterns and placed them around her garden. People from many planets came to pay respect. No one gave speeches. They only sat in silence, watching the wind move through the leaves. The core tower sent a special ship to honor her, but Mira had left clear instructions. No golden statue, no giant machine, just plant more spirals. So instead of a statue, they planted a spiral garden where her house once stood. Each plant was chosen from a different planet. Flowers from Zora, trees from Earth, vines from Pelin. And in the center of the garden, they placed her small wooden chair. No label, no title, just the chair. And the silver flower still humming in the wind. Years passed. The spiral garden became a sacred place. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to sit quietly and observe. Children sat under the trees, tracing spirals in the dirt. Artists painted the patterns of light through the leaves. A new generation of thinkers rose. They called themselves the listeners. They were not loud or proud. They did not wear long robes or carry titles. But they carried notebooks and watched carefully. They asked gentle questions. They waited before speaking. They looked at the world as Mira had, with respect and wonder. One day, a small girl named Alna visited the garden. She was from a quiet moon with no schools. She did not speak much, but her eyes moved constantly, watching everything. She found Mira's wooden chair and sat in it. There was no sound. Then, the silver flower beside her began to glow, and from the petals, Mira's voice echoed softly. All things are connected. The answer is not in the numbers alone. It is in the rhythm. Elna listened. She did not understand everything, but she smiled. Later, she picked up a stone and drew a spiral in the sand. In the core tower, a new door was built. Above it, in simple script, it said, The answer was in the silence. Inside that room, there were no screens, no machines, just plants, a small fountain, and recordings of Myra's voice, not giving commands, but asking questions like, "What does the pattern remind you of? Did you notice the curve in the river? What happens if you wait one more second?" Many scientists found peace there. Some said they finally understood her method. Others said there was no method, only a way of being far away. Beyond the galaxy, explorers discovered a forgotten world that it had strange spirals carved into its stones, the same shape Myra had drawn. Historians believed it was an ancient civilization that once followed spiral thinking too. Myra's gift, it seemed, was not new. She had simply remembered something the stars had known all along. Back in her village, the people kept Myra's ways alive. The garden grew larger. The children became wise. The sky stayed clear, and the silver flower continued to sing in the wind. And whenever a person solved something big, not through force, but through calm thinking, they would whisper. She would have smiled at this.